lot to say. It feels like I'm carrying a 2-ton weight. I go to see a friend.
Hello, I'm Monsignor Patrick Winslow.
And I am Father Matthew Couth.
And we are speaking From the Rooftop,
A podcast brought to you by 10 Books, in which we invite you to join our conversation out here in the open air,
where we look out upon the world around us from the rooftop of the church and share with you what we see.
Makes me wanna scream from the rooftop to the screen till I know I.
Hey there.
How you doing?
I'm fine. How are you? I look blue.
Look ashen. Have you
Yeah.
died? Oh, it's Lent.
It's Lent, yes, of course.
You have died.
This is my penitential look, which I'm not supposed to give off, apparently. I mean, the scripture says that that's not what you do.
No,
But somehow,
on my
despite all of
face.
my efforts to comb my hair and shave my face, I still look like I've been through, a Lenten routine. Like, how do I get caught?
I do actually.
I know, I don't get it.
Well, I think the Lord wants to manifest your virtue. He's not putting that light under a bushel basket. You're on a lampstand.
No, he wants the whole world. He wants the whole world to see the smallest victories of penance he has in my life.
Indeed.
Yes.
Speaking of Lent and Lenten penances, we're over halfway through. So, how have you done there? What's the scorecard?
There's certain things we don't share.
Now, would you share it if the scorecard was good?
No, because I know better. Because then I feel like I have to share it even if it was bad. So I have to say I've stuck to my gun on one of my more
Singular, I hear. I've stuck to not my guns. I've stuck to my gun.
yes, because on one particular discipline. So I've attacked that pretty well. But then there was something I was throwing into the mix where I would get to work on something and not really hitting the mark there. So, Lent is doing its job and showing my faults or incompleteness.
Let's talk more about that.
No, let's not. Let's talk about yours. Can I list them?
What I want to talk about is something about which you have very little experience. So I'm interested to see your mind on something that you have no experience on.
Oh, interesting. Being a choleric?
That's one option, but not where I'm going.
Mm.
I want to talk a little bit about literature as a preparation for the seat of grace. You're not typically given over to literature, but you like stories and you find narratives in other fashions. And I typically always have some novel going. I'm kind of in a rut right now, trying to find a novel that I can get into. And I hate the beginning of a novel because it requires you to get to know so many people.
Yeah, it's hard to be.
Like, I don't have the dramatis personae list like you do in a Shakespeare play. We can keep going back and remembering who people are, which always manifests my lack of concern for most people that I meet whose names I don't remember and what have you. And I think to myself, I'm trying to remember your name and trying to remember who you are. But priest meets so many people in the course of a given day, certainly on the weekend.
Right. I mean, in some of the novels, the Count of Monte Cristo, or some of the other, you practically need a spreadsheet.
It's true. But aside from the difficulties of getting traction, what strikes me about novels, I was asking myself the question not long ago, why do I like novels so much? Because I have lots of friends that don't. We have several priest friends that I know that just don't read novels at all. And I don't know if maybe I'm wrong about you. I just don't remember you talking about a particular novel. But I know you get into novels or narratives in different fashions and different, like Audible maybe, or things of that nature.
Right.
And asking myself that question, I think that what literature does for me is I get to live lots of different lives without having to go through the pain of living those lives. You know, like you get into a character, and a lot of different characters are presented before you, and you're sort of hoping that some will do well and some will get, what they deserve and things of that nature. And a good author can take you on a kind of a ride where you're exposed to yourself. And as is often the case, we say that our humanity is kind of represented to us by virtue of reading
Mhm.
or the arts in general. And I've had so many, probably my most important experiences in my own mind of being open to grace in the middle of finishing a book. Has that ever happened to you?
Yeah, I think I can relate to it in a certain way. Um, I, it's funny because on my way into the office here this morning, I was actually thinking about how shallow character development is in just throughout our culture, um, and I was actually thinking how insidious it is
Mm,
because it doesn't give you the real metaphysical depth. And I say metaphysical because it doesn't kind of drive into the spiritual foundation, the questions that drive us. It's always sort of a storyline where people are presumed to be perfect,
mhm.
except for the foibles that make for the narrative. And even then, they're sometimes endearing or redemptive or something, right? But it doesn't go past the surface. It's sort of that hard or rocky ground, if you will. There's
Yeah.
nothing really below it. And what's so insidious, I think, about something like that is it leaves uh, the observer, the reader, or the viewer, the listener, thinking that they're the only ones with the deep, deep
Right.
angst
Right.
questions.
Right. Right.
Everyone else is having this amazing drama on the surface of life, and it's fulfilling, and it's leading to where they want to go. And in many ways, people try to mimic this in their social media.
Yeah. I was just going to say, this is Instagram, right?
Right.
Everyone's got the golden life, and you're the only one that's left out.
You're the only one left behind, and even the faults are golden in certain ways. They just make you interesting. And it's not the stuff where anyone's admitting to weeping, being brought to the point of tears because of some interior crushing thing. It's not the stuff of a conscience that's going through difficulty and sorting out a right path. It's not the stuff of dealing with the loss of a loved one or one's own mortality. It's just not there. And so I bring all that up because you and I, of course, as priests, I mean, this is the stuff of life. We can't conceive of a life without this stuff being there. This is the foundation. This is what we have access to when people come and speak to us in the confessional, spiritual direction. This is the stuff that we do. And so we've never met a person that didn't have that depth. Whether they were aware of it or not is a whole other question. But they didn't have that depth. Whereas we are being presented in media with what appear to be satisfying superficial lives.
Yeah.
And that is insidious
Yeah.
because it implies that there's something wrong with you and you don't have access to that. And the reason why you don't have access to that is because it's not real.
It's not real.
And that's where this becomes really insidious. So I go back to your point, the question you asked, which was, do you feel as though you're more open to grace after when you're beginning to conclude a book? And I think that if the novel you're reading is diving into those deeper parts of the human experience, then yeah, I think you do, because in a certain sense, your own deeper soil is being tilled in the process.
Yes, exactly.
And so,
Exactly. I totally agree. Go ahead.
yeah, no, and to my cautionary point about a lot of stories that are out there these days, whether they're in film or TV series or whether they're in book form, whatever, um, you can be left feeling very bad about yourself and in fact feeling depressed because you don't fundamentally relate to this amazing story that you just read or heard.
Right.
And the reason why you don't relate to it is because the authors of that story did not weave in the real stuff of life.
Yeah, there was an article I read some years ago. It was really quite brilliant, about sort of heresy of being cool.
Mm.
I mean, which clearly I'm a heretic then, because I am cool.
And you're delusional. So I mean, and you're delusional. So it's quite a.
His point was what you're making basically of sort of facile characters, and the example he used was James Bond.
Mm.
007, who has a life that is wildly flashy, adventurous, just enough romance on the side that means absolutely nothing. We even have the appellation of a Bond girl.
Yeah.
And no matter how much they try to clean that up, men will enjoy those movies. And you're presented with a character that A, doesn't exist, but B, you don't feel adequate to be in his presence, because he's cool. But what Bond never goes into, obviously, is the gut-wrenching reality of having killed people, or having slept around, or having, his mom die, or like you don't get that part of the character. And it's fun. It's fun. I'm not saying it's not fun stuff on some level. Probably not a good thing to watch, but I get why it's attractive. But for the same reason that we're attracted by other facile characters or Instagram or whatever, even though it probably leaves you morbidly depressed because you're not that person.
Right.
So there's a book that I read once, really one of my favorite novels actually, by Graham Greene called The End of the Affair.
Oh yeah.
And in that book, if you recall, he is an author. So the author is writing about an author who is himself, and he's talking about a novel that he's working on. And he says that in every novel that he has, there are some characters who refuse to live. And no matter what he does, he feels like he's dragging them along in the story. They just won't stand upright and take their place as real characters. He can't give them the kind of depth and complexity that real people have. And so then he says, I wonder if that's the way God sees us. And his point is that obviously we're in a story of which we are not the authors, which is why we love stories. There's only one real story, and that's why we love good to triumph in the end, because it's going to. And so those stories, they ring true to us, and they all lived happily ever after. I mean, we love that line just as much as we love Once Upon a Time. And he says, I wonder if that's how God sees us, that the majority of us who refuse to live, that no matter how much grace and prodding is given to us by God, they simply refuse to live. And as a result, they become the backdrop characters for the characters that do choose to live, who of course are the saints.
For contrast, yeah.
And they become
I can see that now that you're describing. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's said that was the most autobiographical novel of Graham Greene.
Yeah.
And you can see it, how in contrast it was with others who didn't plumb the depths of life, who in their actual life tried to stay on the surface. But then there were some characters like the woman with whom he was in love, how she entered into the deeper stuff of life, and then he begrudgingly goes down that path, but kind of forced into it, sparked by her witness or rebuff of him, however you want to put it. But
yes,
yeah, and it is amazing to see that development, and of course, you just kind of get a glimpse, and the way you just articulated it is sort of that contrast of those who are living versus those who refuse to live. It's kind of the inverse of what I was describing that happens. The viewer who walks away thinking life's not like that, they're the ones who are engaging in life. They're the ones who
Yeah,
It's easy to live.
that's living.
Mhm,
Life
that's
is
living.
difficult.
And it's hard because the storylines are so, what they can be so well done. I mean, some of these storylines, they don't have to be, completely, um, how would I put it, crass, or the characters don't have to be such awful people. But it it's just the veneer of life, and it's being presented as though it has depth, and it doesn't. It just, nothing goes deeper in some of these storylines, and so you can feel pretty awful as you walk away from that, and I think it can have a bad effect. It kind of reminds me of the discernment of spirits of Saint Ignatius of Loyola. Now, how it leaves you later, right?
Mhm.
You could almost do this with literature. Or for that matter, any form of entertainment. How does it leave you afterward?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Are you in a better, are you in a worse place, or are you in a better place?
Yeah, it's a kind of junk food test, you know?
Yeah.
Like I don't eat fast food anymore because I'm old. I still like the taste of it, but I
Sure.
pay for it.
Yeah.
And with second-rate literature or horrible, facile movies, stories, what have you, where the characters aren't real, yeah, you feel the same way. You might be attracted to it because it's fast-paced or it's
And
fun.
sometimes the storylines are just entertaining, or
Sure.
the characters are endearing or compelling.
I
mean,
just read, the sisters and I went through Dante's Divine Comedy.
mhm,
It was like 5 years to get through it,
mhm,
because I do it like once, on a Thursday here and there, and so it was wonderful, wonderful practice. I absolutely loved it. But since we finished that, we were looking for things to do, and so we're kinda going through Shakespeare.
mhm,
We just finished Measure for Measure,
right.
which is a strange play
Yeah.
for this reason. Unlike most of his plays, in this one, no one's really a good character.
Hmm.
And it was probably not the best one to start with for the sisters, but, everyone's just it's got, like, the tragic flaw, the fatal flaw of the Greek epics, and they're just not quite right. And so they present themselves as virtuous on a point, but then you're getting all the sort of, backstory and the way in which they're trying to forge a future by actions that are just a bit off.
Mm,
And as we've all attempted at times to push something that we can't make happen. And so the idea is that, well, this is just a little bit, maybe this is a little bit of stealing, maybe this is a little bit of lying, maybe there's a little bit of manipulation, but the end game is going to, justify the means that I'm choosing. And every one of them is engaged in that activity, except
yeah.
for one. And as a result, all of their plans, every person's plan fails. So that was brilliant.
Mm,
And yet, what they all wanted happened despite them,
Hmm.
which in my mind was Shakespeare's way of saying the author of the story is God.
right.
He's the provident one. And you can either write with him in accordance with the rules of literature, meaning our lives and commandments, etc., right reason, or you can try to write against him. And you will still lose. You just become a different character in the story.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point, and it's a really good lesson to take from it. Um, I'm unfamiliar with it, but that
I
to me
haven't read it before myself, so
is it just sounds, brilliantly composed,
yeah.
with a true thesis at its core. And that's where I think, a lot of the literature and character development and storylines, it really comes down to whether or not they're reflecting the truth of things.
Yeah, yeah. And what you were saying earlier about tilling the soil, that really struck a chord with me because that's what I feel like. I feel like I'm turned up
Hmm.
by the literature, and therefore I'm open to a seat of grace.
Hmm.
I'm exposed to myself.
Hmm.
This is going to be surprising for you, but typically when I read good literature, I see all of my faults, both of them. but you do. You see your faults because you're sympathetic to a character,
Yeah.
and you realize that you also hate that character because that character is you.
Right.
Or you see some character that has the things you wish you would have, but you don't have the vim and verve to go after it, and you fail in that arena.
Go ahead.
And so it's exposing.
Mm-hmm.
And with good literature, though, that exposition always has about it some invitation or some sort of call to let God have his way. And I can recall when we were in seminary together, I was reading Les Mis for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And you sort of you just can't you just could not get the fact that Jean Valjean's conscience was that sensitive. And that he had to expose himself to Cosette. He couldn't partake of their happy marriage without her knowing the truth. And I'm reading this thing, and everyone had gone to bed, and maybe you were still up, but it was like midnight, and I'm reading this by candlelight because it's just driving me mad that he's going to expose himself. And I'm telling him no. I'm saying to the book, don't do it. Enjoy the happiness. And of course, he does. And the book ends not tragically, but it's not the ending that I want. And I just sat there as the candle burned down and was just stupefied. But it gets you thinking about my own conscience. In that case, my own conscience, and how lacking it is in sensitivity sometimes.
It reminds me of when just a couple of years ago, Pope Francis had this kind of push for an increase in reading literature, especially for seminarians. And that's it. As we're discussing, that's sound advice, not just for the priesthood, but for anyone.
Yeah.
Have that opportunity to be able to kind of dive in to the substance of life. Of course, what we're saying is what you put in matters, and so you have to really have stuff that is dealing with reality, and that's not it has to be depressing, right? I mean, you can read something that's almost comical, or you can
absolutely,
but it's at least dealing with the substance of things.
I'm reading a children's book right now, by the way.
Is that right?
I love children's literature. Yeah.
Oh, well, probably age appropriate.
Exactly. It's about my level of intellect. So it's the Wing Feather series. I'm sure you've ever heard of it. It's new. It's a bit like the Chronicles of Narnia, that sort of a genre. It's sort of fantasy, but I would never have read it. But my mother got me these books for Christmas, and I looked at her when I opened. And kept like, seriously, I mean, like cartoon kind of things on the front, like anime kind of cartoons.
Sure.
And the whole Oriental anime stuff. And she says to me, she's smart, and says to me, Father Gregory Pine read these.
Oh, really?
Loves them. Like, okay, whatever. Because she knows I trust him and respect him. And obviously his intellect is kind of off the charts. So if he can do it, I can do it. And they're absolutely delightful.
Is that right?
Oh, delightful. It's just, you just get carried along into these wonderful little stories and following these characters. And then all of a sudden, there's just one offhanded line. It's a throwaway line that just stabs you. And you never see it coming because you're just rolling along in a nice little story. And all of a sudden, they're fantastic. I definitely recommend them.
And what's it called again?
The Wing Feather.
All right. Well,
they're funny too. They're quite humorous. So,
all right. Well, before we go,
that was kind of my before we go.
Is that right?
Yeah, I'm reading Wing Feather. So go out and get Wing Feather. I'm not thinking of that.
Well, good. All right. Well, I think I don't know. I was remarking to myself because I constantly am in conversation with myself. Well, I don't know if this is kind of good or poor mental health. But in any event, I was remarking to myself that the spring down here this year has been wildly fluctuating. So as I inquire about the weather for the morning, as I do every day,
You inquire, you ask.
I do. I ask Alexa to tell me what the temperature is going to be. And I get an answer, a very polite, calming, almost spa-like tone. And it says it's the weather, the temperature outside is. So it's like
That's the same time when she euthanizes you in 5 years.
well, she does. Alexa listens to every bit of my life, which is, as long as I don't talk out loud, speak out loud, I'm fine. So, she can't get into, she can't penetrate my thoughts at this point. So I say, what's the weather outside? And I get a temperature, and it's like 30 degrees, and the high is 75.
Yeah.
That is a wild fluctuation, just absolutely insane. But I don't remember in recent past years, it being as cold as it has been this spring or this early spring. So I'm really hoping, this is my final thing, I'm really hoping that this early spring has gotten the bitter cold out of its system, so that by the time we hit Holy Week and Easter week in particular, that we're just kind of full throttle into that spring, that gorgeous spring day.
Yeah,
so
that's disappointing when you get to Easter and if it's cold
or rainy. It's not the best.
Fair enough.
In the Northeast, that was pretty typical, because in the Northeast, it would be the odd year where you have like a really gorgeous, spring Easter day. I remember a lot of Easters being cold, wet, rainy, snowy, whatever. But down here, when I moved to the South, first for graduate school,
all the blossoms on the trees.
Oh my gosh.
Everything's in bloom.
It was crazy. I was in Atlanta.
Right?
And I, as I think I've said before, up in the Northeast, spring is kind of like mud. It's a season of mud. And then suddenly it's summer peaks in. And so my first time in the early 90s down in the South, I saw, temperate days, flowers, sun. It was just so strange. It was noticeable to a young man who probably ordinarily wouldn't notice that. But I couldn't help but to, because I was, it wasn't like a one-day thing or even a week thing where it might be short-lived in the Northeast, but it was a season. And that was really, really, really delightful. Of course, I miss winters. So,
Yeah.
I do miss a proper winter.
Spring is tremendous, as long as you can handle the pollen.
Exactly. Bingo. All right. So then I think we should call it.
Yeah. I hope the next time I see you, you're less ashen.
I'm going to try to fix that. I'm glad you brought that up. I do look like a corpse. I'm going to see what I can do. I don't know how. I got to figure out the lighting here, but we'll get there. Not all of us have the opportunity to get sun-kissed the way you have been. So
I don't do anything.
You have to be inside a lot.
That's true.
But you can frolic outside all day long.
I frolic. It's exactly the word. Yeah.
It's
Skip
all
and I frolic as a child of the Lord.
Yes, indeed. All right, now.
Be
We'll
good.
talk.
Yes. Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Makes me wanna scream from the rooftop to the screen.
Thanks for listening to this episode of From the Rooftop.
For updates about new episodes, special guests, and exclusive deals for From the Rooftop listeners, sign up at rooftop.podcast.com.
And remember, for more great ways to deepen your faith, check out all the spiritual resources available at tanbooks.com.
And we'll see you again next time.
From the Rooftop.
Anywhere.